Hello my dears, my name is Mariana and welcome to my channel. So today we're going to focus on something that is an incredibly widespread problem for us tarot readers, but absolutely never discussed, so I figured now is a good time. So our focus today is what in the world do you do when you can't make sense of a card? And this is such an important topic because I'm sure you've had this experience of pulling a card, having absolutely no idea what to do with it, what it means, especially in the context of whatever your particular situation is. And so you pull 4, 5, 6 clarifiers to only make yourself so much more overwhelmed and confused, and then finally just throw out the whole thing. If you have ever done that, you are not alone. I have done it so many times. But I don't want you to throw out your readings. I want you to learn how to go deeper with the cards to actually understand the invitation they're laying out before you on the table. And so we're actually going to talk through 4 steps to making sense of a card that doesn't make sense. And if you're new here, I am actually a professional archetypal tarotist, which basically means that I have a much deeper approach to the cards, bringing in depth psychology, mysticism, mythology, etc. And I'm also a tarot teacher, and I actually want to let you know about a really exciting workshop that I have coming up in just a couple weeks. If you're a tarot beginner, and if you're watching this video, there's a chance you might be, then this workshop is made for you. This is not your standard copy-paste tarot class where you're just given a list of keywords and asked to study it until you basically go blind. The Foundations of the Tarot workshop is geared for the soulful, deep tarotist who knows there's some exquisite wisdom in the card that they want to access. It is absolutely designed for the beginner. So if you've only just bought your first deck or just started moving through the keywords, don't worry, this is for you. Our approach in this workshop is not just drilling memorization, but actually cultivating relationship with the cards. We're going to talk about divination versus individuation, the collective unconscious, and engaging the psyche while we're reading. We're going to talk about how to actually speed up that process of memorization and really access that intuitive place. We're also going to practice together and actually look at how to make all of this make sense in a real reading. There's also some excellent bonuses that come along with this workshop, including an ultimate beginner's resource list where you'll have all the resources that I highly recommend, such as books, podcasts, YouTube channels, etc., as well as the Archetypal Tarot Elements ebook. This is an exclusive offering for the students of the Foundations of the Tarot workshop. Inside this ebook is the breakdown of each of the 78 cards into its most important archetypal and symbolic elements. There's also some spreads, a depth psychology glossary, and just general tips in getting started with an archetypal tarot approach. The workshop is 3 weeks long and starting May 23rd. And if this sounds exciting to you, all the information, including dates, times, price, all of that is available if you click the link in the description. So let's get into it then. So in my experience, there's really 3 main reasons that we get stuck with certain cards. First, we're just not that familiar with the card yet, and so we see it and something just doesn't click. 2, it just doesn't seem to make any sense in the context of the reading. Like we're reading about career, for example, and pull the 2 of Cups. What in the world do we do with that? And 3, we see the card, know what it means, know how it might apply to the context, but it's just wrong. It just doesn't seem to be true for us in that moment. So rather than freak out and pull 25 clarifiers, we can do some steps. There's some things we could do. Hot take, I am not a fan of clarifiers. I hate on clarifiers a little bit. So if you're a clarifiers person, disregard. Do you, but I should explain why I hate clarifiers probably. I think that all it ends up doing is muddling the reading. We just keep pulling and pulling and pulling and pulling and getting more confused. And it just is always a recipe for disaster and absolutely never helps anything except for like in the most like few and far between moments. So I just, as a rule of thumb, I just say, don't even confuse yourself. Just stick with the cards you have. But if you feel the intuition pulling you to do it, and you are used to it and it actually helps and you're good at that, then go for it. Personally, if I pull the Five of Swords and have no idea what it's meaning for me, and then I pull the Moon on top of it, I'm gonna lose it. So I can't. So our very first step when we're stuck with a card is to explore the keywords. This sounds very obvious, and it is. If we pull, for example, the Sun card, and we know the keywords that we have on hand are joy and youth and excitement, but we're reading about how to kind of heal a relationship with an ex, and that just doesn't make sense, we should go back to a guidebook that we trust, and see what other possibilities are there. A lot of us tarotists have a lot of books, especially tarot books, to reference, so that's great. It can be a little overwhelming, though, of course, to have 10 to 15 different tarot books to reference, because they're all going to have very different interpretations. There's usually a core theme running between them all, but sometimes they're just all over the place, and that can be a little bit too much. But it's actually very useful sometimes to go to the guidebooks and read something that you just didn't expect, and that might actually start to help the card make sense. So for example, if you pull the Sun card and you know joy, youth, excitement, and you go to a guidebook and it says consciousness, understanding of a situation, now we have something different. That alone might offer a lot to contemplate. And I know this is super simplistic, but I can't tell you how often people will tell me that they've pulled a card and that they don't know what to do with it. And I'll say, have you checked 78 Degrees Wisdom to see what that book says? And they'll be like, oh, I have that book. And then reply to me and be like, wow, that was perfect. That's exactly what I needed. Like, yes, that was it. And I'm just like, yeah, there's resources out there, probably on your own bookshelf. Just as a note, if you follow tarot readers and astrologers and stuff on Instagram or TikTok or whatever, check your guidebooks and resources first before you DM them asking them to interpret cards for you, because I can't tell you how many times a week I get DM'd with people asking me what the Seven of Swords means and what it means in their readings. And I don't know the context of your reading, and I can't tell you, but books are great. So that's only step one. So once we've done that, we've collected some new information, maybe some of that stuff makes a lot of sense and helps and gets us where we need to go with the card, and maybe you're still like, all right, so now I have the word consciousness brought in here, or understanding, but it still doesn't make sense. So the second step is to collect your personal associations. This is actually the step that ends up being most helpful for people. So let's stick with the idea of the Sun card. For most people, they're going to see the Sun and get kind of excited. They're going to say, oh, this is really great, such a positive card. But I am extremely weird and very miserable Scorpio person. And when I see the Sun card, I actually get really disappointed. And I have absolutely no idea what to do with it. I'm just so much more comfortable in the spaces of the Moon and the Dark Cups cards. And I can really access that depth of intense feeling. And so when the brightness of the Sun comes in for me, I'm just kind of I don't even know what to do with that. I don't even know how to experience that at all. It's weird to me. But that's kind of the point, is that for me, the Sun has a sort of different personal association than it would for a lot of other people. So when I see the Sun card and I run through the keywords already in my head and then refer to a guidebook that I know has some good info, and then bring it back into my personal experience, there's a layer to it that I'm already going to start questioning. Is the Sun calling me out a little bit? In my relationship with the tarot, the Sun is uncomfortable for me, and that gives me information about what the card is pointing to. Years ago, I read for somebody who was making some really big decisions about their career, and we pulled the Two of Cups, and I was just really kind of confused about what to do with that card in the situation. And then they told me that that cup for them, their personal association with it, was not love as much as it was connecting deeply to what felt like it mattered to them. And so that actually really, really helped the reading, and it made it so much clearer what the resolution was for them. I've also pulled other cards that people associate with family members or aspects of their life that I never would have guessed. It's really important to bring in those personal associations because when we're working with the tarot, especially when we're bringing it into that deeper layer, when we're really trying to understand how it's communicating with us, to us, then we want to know what it's saying to our specific psyche. And so those personal associations are vital. They are so important to understanding that. Honestly, I recommend just getting out a pen and paper and just stream of consciousness, writing down all the things that you personally connect to this card. Maybe there's not a lot. Maybe you pull, for example, the Seven of Cups and say, I really have never pulled this before, or I just don't have anything associated with it, and you just don't really know where to go with that. Maybe you've pulled it for other people, and that can also be information. And just a note, it doesn't always have to be the meaning of the card itself. Sometimes the symbols are enough. So for another example, I read for a client a little while ago who told me that he was dreaming of snakes, that he was seeing all these snakes in his dream, didn't really know what they meant, and in particular, green snakes. And I thought that was interesting, and I pulled the last card of the reading, and it was the Magician. And what's crazy about that is that on that card, in the Golden Art Nouveau Tarot, which I was using, there is a green snake wrapped around the Magician's waist. And that symbol of that snake is the Ouroboros, this completion, the snake eating its own tail, everything kind of coming full circle. It's a huge symbol, a huge archetype. But in that moment, my client was kind of stunned. It hit. It was so obvious that that symbol was a personal symbol, something that had been coming up for him, and that's what connected the card. So explore the symbols, explore the layers, and just see what comes up. Once you do that, you're ready for step 3, which is to ask, what is the card telling me that I already know? Okay, so this is what I mean by this. Let's go back to that example of the Sun card. If I pull it for myself and I know all the keywords, I collect those personal associations, and I ask, what is it telling me that I already know? The first thing that might pop into my head is, maybe it's time to get a little bit more comfortable with the brighter, more positive side of life. Maybe stop being such a cynical person. I would get that information because I know the keywords of the card pointing to that brightness and optimism, and also I know my personal association is that it's kind of uncomfortable for me. I don't always know what to do with it. So it's kind of easy for me to come to the conclusion of what I already know is that sometimes I reject and put a little bit too much distance between me and that sun. Another example might be that you pull the Nine of Pentacles, and your question with the cards is, I think I want to start a new business. I'm really excited about it, but is this the right move for me? If you pull that Nine of Pentacles, you might automatically think, I already know that this is going to be something that will be abundant and successful, and I don't really need to struggle too much with that information. I already feel like I know it. Or maybe you pull the Knight of Swords, and you know the keywords around it are recklessness and impulsivity, rushing, and when you look at the card, you have this association of when you were a teenager and you just would rush through your homework and never get anything done. And so when you ask, what is it telling me I already know? It clicks in, well, yeah, I'm rushing through my work right now, and that's not serving me. This is an old pattern that I can probably let go of at this point. But let's consider those trickier cards. If you are doing a career-oriented reading and you end up pulling the Two of Cups, maybe you go back and you look at some keywords and you see words like harmony, union, healing. And then you spend some time with your personal associations and realize that you connected to a time in your life when you were actually really at peace. Maybe you were with a partner that you really loved, maybe you were in a job that you really loved, and it just felt like everything was working out well. Then if you ask yourself, what is it telling me that I already know? Maybe it's telling you that you know you do have the capacity to be in a situation, in a job, in a relationship that feels really restorative, really good, that you don't always have to be struggling. And even though the card is kind of tricky in a career-oriented reading, you now are closer to understanding what it's showing you about yourself. The point of this step is not to arrive at any big answers, but just to let the thing come through. Let the immediate wisdom, the immediate intuition about what the card is pointing to just arise. We don't need to think too hard at this point. But now we're moving on to step 4, which is definitely a little bit trickier, which is ask, what is it telling me that I don't know? This is a pretty hard question to ask, I know. I'm aware. Asking to know something that you don't know is literally a paradox and an impossible thing, so just bear with me for a second. This is the point in our inquiry with the card or exploration of the card when we have to be the most receptive. Because, sorry to tell you, but when you're reading tarot for yourself, it's never going to be easy. Because when we're engaging with the cards, we're looking at a collection of symbols. We're looking at archetypal content. And so what we expect to happen is that our conscious brains just get it. We just snap into it and it makes total sense and we know totally everything we should be doing. Instead, what actually happens is that the card speaks to us on a much deeper level, a partially unconscious level. And so while our conscious brains are struggling with it and don't totally get it, some part of us really does. And so we have to be a bit patient. We have to be willing to engage with that part. We have to be willing to sit in the not knowing longer than is comfortable. So what I recommend is asking, what are you telling me I don't know? Sometimes something will pop up out of nowhere. We'll hear something, we'll get that intuition that'll just flood us and we'll go, oh crap. Yeah, okay, that's it. But more often than not, we'll hear just dead silence. That doesn't mean that we're not accessing our intuition, and it doesn't mean that we pulled the wrong card. It means our conscious minds are not ready for it yet. It's just not alchemized, just not worked through enough to make sense. But I promise you, 9 out of 10 times, if you continue to stay with the card, you continue to ask it what it has to show you and offer, something will come through. I one time had a client who pulled the King of Wands, which is a card that it's a court card. It's a little bit tricky to read. We know it's about, passion as the wands are. It's about authority. It's about force of will. It's just a very kind of activated card. And I pulled this card for the client and he just was kind of like, it's not me. I'm not that guy. And we explored different possibilities and it didn't really make sense in any aspect of his life. He's a very intellectual person, very calm, never made rash decisions, just very even keel. I ran through a lot of keywords to see what connected with him. Not much did. We moved through some personal associations, what the card brought up in him since he knew a little bit about the tarot already. Not much came up there either. So at that point, after trying a few things, we just kind of left it alone. And that is totally okay. If you don't know what a card means in the moment, it's okay to just step away and give it some space. And this client kept in touch, and a little bit later, he emailed me that he was starting to see some things in him that he didn't quite understand. And he realized there was this incredibly passionate and kind of aggressive side of him that was really unhappy with certain aspects of his life that the more intellectual and calm, rational side had really pushed down. And so the King of Wands ended up actually being a really important card and point of reflection for him because he realized that this side of him needed to find a way to be expressed, but also tamed. It couldn't just take over whenever it needed to. He needed to get in touch with that anger and that fire and then figure out how to actually advocate for himself more in his life. And this was really important for him, but absolutely would not have been available inside that hour of the reading. This was something really deep in him, really inaccessible. The card unconsciously triggered something in him that over time, days, even weeks, he was able to start to see and understand. And so when we ask the card, what is it telling me I don't already know? We wait for the answer. We have to be patient. This is the time to use some of those techniques that I listed in this video. Go check it out, such as active imagination and creating a dialogue and just bringing the card into a more, deeper space to engage with the psyche. And then we wait. And I promise, I know we want to rush through the cards. I know we want to understand what they mean in the moment. This is not how we work as humans. To understand the greater wisdom that's beyond us and within us, we have to be willing to slowly and intentionally forge that relationship. It is so important that we are able to trust ourselves in this process and not treat ourselves like circus animals that we can just train to produce these, revelations and these answers when we're not really ready for them. And if we can be a little bit better at listening, a little bit better at receiving, I promise it's going to start coming. So these are the 4 steps to working through those sticky cards. And I know it's not like the most wonderful thing of saying, well, there you go. You just gotta, do this training manual and you'll get it every time. It just doesn't work like that. And I also really don't want you to just throw out the cards that you pulled because they just don't make sense in the moment. Of course they don't. You're supposed to learn something about yourself, and you can't learn something if you already know it. That's the point. So be patient, go slow, try out these steps, and let me know how they go. Please leave a comment or find me on Instagram and let me know. I really want to know. Don't forget to check out the Foundations of the Tarot workshop. Go follow me on Instagram. I have so much good tarot tips over there. Make sure you subscribe here for the videos that come out whenever I want them to. I'm sorry about that, by the way. I'm really busy, so, you know, sometimes just gotta learn how to relax and let it flow, so I'm trying. Anyway, I hope this video was really useful for you, and I hope you have a beautiful, meaningful day. It's the eclipse in Scorpio, and I am a Scorpio sun, and so I am extremely salty today, so I apologize in advance. Not even in advance, because I think I've already been pretty salty today, so I just apologize.